Hey, welcome to Unshaved. I'm Takesha, and this podcast came to be simply because I wanted to archive conversations between me and my mother. And because we talked about pursuing a creative project together for a long time now, I just figured starting a podcast would kind of fit the bill for both. Our lives and relationship have had many twists, turns, highs, and lows, and the way we've gotten through them always started with raw conversations. We're consistently pursuing a deeper understanding of not only each other and our relationship, but also of ourselves. If the topics and conversations explored in this space help you to navigate your journey in any way, then that's even better. So whether it's just myself or if I'm joined by my mom or other guests, you can expect content that is explorative, honest, and maybe even just a little bit outside the lines. Welcome to Unshaved. Thank you to those of you who are returning listeners, as well as to those of you tuning in for the first time. In this first half of a conversation with my mom, we discussed the importance of taking accountability for any trauma or pain we've caused others to experience through our actions or lack thereof, and how reciprocal compassion leads to deeper understanding and growth. We talked about quite a bit in our previous episodes that we put out there. And, I was thinking about, we addressed things kind of vaguely, but we really didn't get an opportunity to kind of talk about the in between to any degree, and that's fine because you can't put everything out in one conversation or express, the magnitude of a relationship for my lifelong. It's going to take time to cover, the span of our relationship and all of the things that it entails. But what I was thinking about was, I don't remember how soon after you started in your journey of recovery, but I remember watching a talk show where there was a mother who had dealt with some form of addiction. I'm not exactly sure, what it was exactly. There was a mother who was dealing with addiction or had dealt with addiction, and she was in her recovery. And on the show with her were her children, and they seemed to be a little bit at odds. And it seemed to be because the children wanted to acknowledge their pain, and the mother was just kind of resistant to it because it seemed like she felt like them acknowledging their pain wasn't, mm, it seemed like she felt like it was disregarding her change, you know? And that just hit me different, right? Because I'm like, we want to celebrate people when they make changes in their lives and stuff. But when you talk about like parent child dynamic and all of the things that probably go on, that every situation is not going to be the same, but there's a lot of there's some levels of dysfunction and things like that that happen in trauma in relationships like that, when children have to witness their parents going through addictions and they affect them to some degree. So I understand that she wanted to live a new life and feel supported in that, but I felt like, she needed to also acknowledge the fact that, just because she was living a different life at that time, it didn't mean that there were still residual feelings and things that needed to be worked through for her children to do that. And I remember having a conversation with you about it. And I think initially what I remember was that you felt like, yeah, she's changed or whatever. But as we talked about it a little bit more, you started to understand where I was coming from, in the fact that, yes, the parent is living a new life and that's all well and fine, but we can't just disregard all of the damage that may have occurred to the children along the way just because, someone else can turn away from their past. It doesn't mean that these other people that have been affected by it, whether it be children or other people in relationships with people who have, dealt with people suffering through addictions. So do you remember that?
Yes. Wow, Keisha, you said something so very significant. And I can really understand because I'm I was in that situation myself, recovering. And I believe that in the beginning of my recovery, it was just important for me to pretty much I do it in a kind of selfish way. But
Okay.
as I grew, I realized how I affected those around me that loved me, and that was a part of the whole dynamic, such as yourself. Um, but actually, Keisha, what I had to really hear from you, and I think this is something that perhaps recently, maybe like, I guess it's been close to, been over 6 months now, but I needed to actually hear your pain. And that particular day that we had a very intense conversation was the first time I actually heard your pain. And me hearing your pain was very significant in my recovery. And it also helped me to be more sympathetic and compassionate to your feelings. Um, because understand that after many years of using and trying to live differently, actually, the addict is really just in the beginning concentrating and focusing on their own process, which is pretty much what I had to do. And I understand that parent, but I also understand that it is very important for any parent at some point to realize that what she did affected others, especially her loved ones, her children, her parents, her siblings. Um, and because we're all recovering for real, because I was the one that really did the physical, but you experienced it on another level. However, you did experience it, you were affected. And I was so grateful because I needed to hear your pain. I hope you remember the exact incident I'm talking about when you actually confronted me about your pain.
I do. I do.
Yes, and that was important because see, I never knew that I understood that it affected you, but I never realized just how deep it was.
Hmm.
And I understand even better now that you're recovering too.
And this also, I feel like, was kind of laid out and rolled out in many conversations, Mom, because I honestly, it's not like I was just hiding my pain. I know for myself, I just kind of sometimes to get through things, I found myself suppressing things. And as they came up, and I would explore them with you. But I just want to go back because you were talking about compassion, and I don't want to neglect to mention that I didn't realize your pain either. From my point of view, I was just like, man, she's intelligent, she's smart. I don't understand why she's making this choice, and I didn't really understand the level of addiction. It was when I visited you in treatment and you shared an assignment with me. It was so impactful, Mom, because this assignment asked you to recall, I guess, some different instances where your addiction failed to allow you to show up. Or maybe I'm not saying that right. When your addiction did not allow you to show up in your life the way you wanted to. There was a couple of incidents that you mentioned and you recalled, and I didn't even we never talked about it, so I didn't know that these things stuck out to you. I just assumed that maybe you didn't remember them, that you didn't have any feelings associated with them, and I lacked compassion toward you. Like you may remember that, like even if you would cut yourself if you were doing something and bleeding. I just really couldn't relate to your pain. I was just because of the pain that I was feeling and holding on to. Like, yes, we had communication, we could talk, but there was still a lot of dysfunction in our relationship. That was just something that we could hold on to and eventually build on. But we were basically just trying to survive in some small way. We weren't thriving in our relationship, we were just getting by. And I was like, man, I can't relate to her pain. She's bleeding. She's saying she's hurt, but I just couldn't connect with your pain because of all the pain that I felt like you inflicted on others. It just seemed like to be able to inflict that kind of pain, you must not be able to feel it, if that makes any sense. That was my impression. And so unraveling all of the pain, and things like that. It took time. We've had several conversations. And what I do remember about coming to you within the last couple of years as things continue to reveal themselves to me in my growth, I was really surprised. Like you referenced this last conversation, or not the last one, but the one that we had. I think you said maybe about 6 months ago. I really don't remember the time frame, but I know all of these have been fairly recent, and I was kind of exhausted. I didn't expect you to get what I was saying because I feel like I'd made some attempts to say it along the way, but they were only attempts because I was revealing them as I understood them. You know what I mean? So it was kind of half-assed, but at this particular conversation, you got it. And not only did you get what I was saying, but you reiterated and you confirmed all of the things that I had been saying before, and you put it together. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God. And I felt bad because I was almost shortchanging you. Like, she's not going to get this. It's going to go over her head. We're going to be at an impasse. She's not going to understand what I'm trying to say, but you really got it. You really got it. And that meant a lot to me.
Yes, yes. I'm just getting so emotional because I can recall that moment, that very important moment when I did get it all in a whole right then. Although, like you said, you had been feeding it to me throughout conversations. But Keisha, you know what I realized? Sometimes because of uh, our dysfunctional relationship, and because we're trying to build a healthy one, it perhaps sometimes takes several conversations to get
Absolutely.
to a certain place. And girl, I'm telling you, Keisha, I was so elated because, oh my God, I actually felt your pain for the first time ever to that degree that I felt it like it was my own.
Mhm.
And I needed that. I needed that. I can remember actually reaching out to my sponsor, after our conversation. Um, and this is what I'm talking about, in recovery, how we may have different facets of experiences, like the woman with the children that you first started off with, and how she thought that the kids were kind of dismissing her recovery. um I know that that's not it at all. What it is that she had to get to a place where she realized that what she did, how it affected not just her, others around her. Because Keisha, I can remember when I was using, I said it out loud on several occasions. Well, why should anyone care? I'm not doing anything but anyone but myself. It wasn't until I got into recovery that I realized what I do to myself has a significant impact on those around me.
Mhm.
You know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
you know, and that drawing that I shared with you when I was in treatment, it was showing, it was my idea of how powerless I felt over the drugs, because it was never, in my heart to abandon you.
Mhm.
It was never in my heart to have you be such a part of such a vicious cycle. I thought I was just doing it to myself.
Mhm.
I had no idea how it affected those around me, especially you.
Yeah, and I can't say that I was always extremely conscious of the ways that it was affecting me, um and there are layers here. It's not just drug use, there's abandonment issues. And I know that because mama did a lot of the initial rearing, that you felt like I was in good hands, and I was. But I you know when I later learned that when the people that are supposed to love you the most, like, and we would like to think that these are our parents, the people that bring us into the world where we don't feel the love or support, or we feel rejected on some level. Like, I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that you were struggling with your own things to that degree for it not to affect me in some kind of way. And when you don't get that from those initial sources that it's natural to come from, it does a number on you. I have a loving family. I have a supportive family for the most part, but I didn't, you know, I know that there are some people who've had experiences like this where they grow up in areas where they are privy to the damaging effects of drugs in their everyday life. I was so far removed from that aspect that I didn't see anybody else going through or struggling what I didn't see anyone else going through or struggling with what I was. And I felt very isolated. I felt like
Right.
it was just borrowed time, like the life that I was living, it wasn't one that I was being provided through my parents or anything like that. That cushion of support. It felt like at any day my life could very well change, and it drastically did when mama died. That was when, the sheltering that was in place completely crumbled. And that's when I had to deal with life in a different way. And I was 11.
I know. I know that was a very hard time for both of us.
I appreciate you for making time to listen in to this episode of Unshaved. Thank you. I genuinely hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have questions or suggestions for topics to explore, please email unshaved.podcast@gmail.com. Be sure to indicate if you'd like to be mentioned if your feedback or questions are addressed. I take it that you've enjoyed the content since you've made it this far. Depending on the platform you're hearing this on, let me know so we can really engage with one another. So drop a comment, click the star, download, subscribe, applaud, click the like button, and share this with others. Unshaved is on Facebook and Instagram. Also, you can show the show some love through donations on Anchor. Last but not least, remember you can turn on your notifications so you'll know when we're back with new episodes. Till then, let's continue to live with love and light.